Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Slaughter. I'm the Executive Director of Literacy University and Executive Producer of Red TV, Real Education Television, where we deal with real learning, real education, real teaching, and real results. And today we have Hilderbrand Pelzer III, academic giant, in the room, and we're talking about reading. We're talking about fathers as reading mentors. Hilderbrand, would you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Hilderbrand Pelzer III, born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, educator here in Philadelphia School District, a principal, and served at many levels, and also an author and someone who's enthusiastic about education for our young people.
We're excited about Hilderbrand being here with us. We're talking today about reading and fathers as reading role models. What are your thoughts about fathers being reading role models to their sons?
A unique concept. Typically, father involvement in the context of parental involvement is very low. Typically, schools look for mothers and grandmothers to engage with the school, and mostly when you look at the numbers, those are the individuals who engage. But the uniqueness of having parents, having fathers, and brothers, older brothers, participate and engage in the school is something that many schools can do better with.
Conceptually, we're talking about something that is completely new, like you said. The sad part we were just talking about off camera is that many mothers are the reading role models for their children. Unfortunately, not all the time do sons relate to the mothers as academic giants, and so when they find the father is also a reader and the father is not necessarily in the home, we have to now connect the father and the son in the reading academic area. So what we're doing here with this concept is trying to move the fathers and sons into a direction of literacy. With that being said, what are your thoughts on how that can happen?
It's not actually difficult. It's just a matter of two things. One, the mindset that the school wants to engage fathers and they want to see an increase in fathers in their buildings around literacy. So schools can hold workshops. Schools have an obligation to engage parents through federal dollars. Schools have an obligation to focus on literacy as well as other things. So it's a matter of being creative, being innovative, and having initiatives inside the school where fathers are the key audience.
Absolutely amazing. Tell us, recently I read an article that deals with an academic area that you're interested in. Tell us about your writing in the newspaper that, is it with your school district?
No, it's the Philadelphia Citizen. It's an online magazine. It's been around for a while. The concept, however, of the Philadelphia Citizen, as well as some other publications that I'm learning about, is about solution-oriented. So you cannot just write about a problem. You cannot just write about an education problem. But you have to write about the problem and the solution that you, the writer, the columnist, has experience with. So I have a 6-article agreement with the Philadelphia Citizen, and currently my 4th one will be coming out soon, which is about parental involvement, parents as learners. But the first 3 were about student achievement, building conditions, and the elephant in the room, in the classroom, poor instructional delivery.
Poor instructional delivery. Now that is a big component in my head in terms of why schools are failing. One of the reasons why schools are failing traditionally is because there is poor teaching in the classroom. Poor teaching in the classroom ruins the academic future of the people in front of you. If your students are with a poor teacher, there's no way the children can learn. Tell us your thoughts on that.
So true. Sometimes I sit in classrooms. I've been in education now for over 25 years at every level, teacher, assistant principal, central office level. And if I go inside of a classroom and I don't get it, then I know my young people don't get it. And that happens inside of classrooms every day throughout many schools. So we really have to work with our teachers, give them not only training and professional development, but give them feedback on those action steps that they can take to make learning exciting for young people.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. It starts with poor teacher prep programs, or teachers who are going to schools where there is no teacher prep program. What is a teacher prep program?
Well, universities, colleges, all have them. It's within the education department of any major university and or college. And it's really about preparing future educators, future teachers for teaching profession. And that's the gist of it. However, one thing that is missing is the calling. So folks go into this profession for any number of reasons. Parents were educators, inspired by our educator, want to give back. But whatever the case is, there must be that calling, because this work is very difficult. The work of education is hard, it's difficult, but very rewarding on the opposite end. And while universities do a fairly decent job academically, the preparation is really about the opportunity to be engaged in that classroom prior to starting, so that you get exposed to the real conditions around education. You get exposed to the real challenges that young people are having. So you get exposed to the communities that you will be assigned to. So you can get exposed to the challenges that the school has. So often and too often, folks who come into the profession of education, for whatever reason, again, get hit with those challenges and aren't able to maneuver and navigate. And that's where schools and principals and colleagues must come in to help shape them and help them, support them, and coach them. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
It is a challenge. So I went to Cabrini College when I was in undergrad, now called Cabrini University. And what I tell a lot of the teachers who I mentor, that was a classic teacher prep program, and I'll tell you why. For one thing, I majored in education. I actually double majored in journalism and secondary education. And so in the secondary education program, we had to do what was called internships. So we had to become a student teacher. I was a student teacher in 4 different schools in the 4 years that I was a student there. I taught in suburban education, and I taught in urban education. And with those 2 entities, I was able to learn the and maneuver through the terrain and the milieu of that academic environment.
Absolutely.
Okay? Right now, I'd like you to think about, what does it take to maneuver through your academic environment? We have a lot to talk about, so I hope you're ready.
I'm ready.
Right? So we'll be back in just a moment. We are back with Hilderbrand Pelzer III, and we're talking on Red TV, Real Education Television, and I'm delighted to have this gentleman in the room. We are really eating the elephant as I thought we would. We're about to get into another segment and idea regarding hiring practices, and I want school administrators to think about, do you have teachers who fit well into your academic setting? We talked a little bit about teachers and the academic terrain in which they are in charge of, and Mr. Pelzer has some amazing ideas on how that teacher-school fit should happen. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes, and I would like him to explain what goes on in terms of behind the scenes in the hiring practices.
Yes. So, different scenarios based on the district. I know when I was a young teacher, moving from correctional education setting to the Chester School District, I recall the principal interviewing me and giving a recommendation to the school district for my hire. Moved on to the Philadelphia School District, and early on there were examinations that you had to take and score, and that's how you were hired. Now, in Philadelphia in particular, there's still that hiring at the district level, to screen candidates, backgrounds, make certain certifications are in place, but schools are able to site select teachers, meaning they have an interview opportunity with candidates.
Interesting.
And they then fill their vacancies. That's the gist of the hiring process. It is in that site selection process, however, is where school teams, principal, and maybe some teachers and some parents are trying to find that fit through the questioning, through the response, through the engagement, understanding the person's background to see if they're fit for their school's culture.
Excellent. Amazing. When you think about some of the success stories of teachers in the classroom, tell us about your school and the success stories in your school in terms of teacher-school fit.
Well, Cornell several years ago, we entered into a redesign opportunity. It was a school improvement opportunity where we did several things. One, we changed our instructional model to project-based learning. We reshaped our vision for the school in terms of what we wanted to accomplish for student outcomes. And we looked for teachers at that time to apply who were interested in that instructional model, one, but understood that the reason we were changing our instructional model is because we wanted to also improve our performance. So to improve our performance, we were looking for teachers who not only were excited about project-based learning, not that they had to know it, because we can develop you around it, learn about it, but were you an individuals who had the stamina for the performance aspect that we were going to engage in, meaning using data, meaning rigorous professional development, implementing new curriculum, working with parents, improving our school culture, all of those type of things in a building, in a neighborhood that is every day changing.
Every day changing. And that is a successful program. That is a program that is moving forward in terms of helping students learn. I want to turn our attention to something else that we had talked about, which is those success stories that are not happening, or in other words, some failing situations. As we all know, in the news recently, we've seen many teachers online, on Facebook, on Twitter, who have gotten into a lot of hot water, doing things in classrooms that are almost criminal. And why this happens is, one, because those people are not teachers necessarily. Teaching is a vocation of love, and you must be able to work with the clientele you have.
Absolutely.
So those anomalies that we see online are horror stories. But let's back up a little bit to those stories that are failures. Not horror stories, but those teachers who are maybe trying to do the best thing, but they're in the wrong environment. Or maybe they're not in the wrong environment, they just have no background in this work. Tell me your thoughts on the idea of classroom discipline and teachers in the classroom who may not be in the right school for them.
Right. So classroom discipline and classroom management is too often a concern for new teachers, guest teachers, and teachers who are not developing relationships with their students.
Good point.
And it is an aspect of delivering instruction that you have a well-maintained classroom. But classroom management, in my opinion, my perspective, is more about putting in procedures, routines that set the culture of your classroom, set the environment of your classroom, even how the furniture may be arranged and how you greet children each and every day. That relationship, that norm setting, that expectation setting can move classroom management to a point where it's very strong, and it does not become something that you have to focus in on every day, because ultimately the goal is to teach young people. Too often, however, Rachel, school communities, principals, because there are principals who also have this thought as well,
Absolutely.
as well as teachers, that you have to focus in on discipline or expect that it will happen. And as a result, that consumes your day, that consumes your time.
Very good.
Instead of teaching children what you want them to do and teaching children how to be scholars that you want them to be.
Absolutely.
So at my school, I see challenges in the classroom, not all of my classrooms, because I pride myself on making certain that I have more classrooms than not that are functioning well. But I have classrooms that are not functioning well, and I go in to see why they're not functioning well.
Yes.
And what I find is the absence of strong procedures.
Absolutely.
And fidelity to the procedures. So, for example, every morning my students say a creed, and in the classrooms during breakfast we do a morning circle, and before the day ends, a closing circle that discusses norms like being polite, problem solving, prompt, patient, being prepared, or issues that may have occurred during the day. And most times when I see young people who come to me or have some issues, I'll ask them, did you do the morning circle today? And they'll say no. That's how I know the fidelity to these norms and expectations and teaching and learning is very important. So sometimes teachers get overwhelmed, right? But you have to continue to teach young people what it is you want them to do.
Sure.
And how you want them to develop.
Be true to the process. Be, like you said, have fidelity in your procedures. I know that it takes about 6 weeks to set up a classroom.
Yeah.
Okay? And in
right.
those 6 weeks,
Absolutely.
you have to figure out your rules, procedures.
Absolutely.
You have to get to know your students. Really, as a teacher mentor and middle administrator for a few years, I've taught my teachers, you really should take about 6 weeks to get
6
to know
weeks.
your students.
You're right.
Create the relationship.
Absolutely.
Find out who each one of your students is. In this respect, now you have developed compassion.
Right.
And really, Hilderbrand, compassion is the #1 component in the classroom. Without it, and I'm not talking about tolerance.
Right.
I'm talking about compassion.
Right. Care.
And care and understanding
Mhm.
of each other's background.
Yeah.
I've talked to teachers, especially those teachers in the inner city who say, I just don't understand the kids. And I say, what's there to understand?
Right.
They're kids.
Right.
That's the first thing.
Right.
So in being a child, the child is going to try to get you off your
Right.
game. That's what children do. They
Right.
may not want to do what's difficult. So that's universal, right? So I've taught in upper suburban schools, lower suburban schools, upper inner city schools, lower inner city schools. And when I say upper and lower, I mean in terms of economics. And so I've taught in all white classrooms, all black classrooms, all Hispanic classrooms, right? I've taught in Muslim schools. It's 25 years of education. Very few groups I have not taught. And one thing I can tell you is all students have the same characteristics, no matter what area they come from.
That's right. They're children.
They're children.
They're children.
And so I actually want to talk a little bit about that. Tell me at least maybe 2 of your top ideas in terms of running the best classroom possible.
Well, the best classrooms are those classrooms, one, where, as I said earlier, culture is set. Okay? There's a connection between the teacher and the student, where the teacher, to the best of his or her ability, knows the backgrounds of the children, as well as their family, and what their interests are, what their concerns are, what their fears are, and what they want to be in life. That connection. 2, taking that time, as you mentioned earlier, 4 to 6 weeks that month of September going into October, to really set the patterns, the expectations, practice them every day, and hold students accountable for them, and give them a role within that.
Right.
And then thirdly, the environment.
Nice. Okay.
The academic environment, the literacy environment, the math environment, anchor charts around the room that also reinforce the expectations. They also reinforce the learning so that students can use their classroom as a resource for their learning. Those are the three things that should be done early, very early. And then as you move through the school year, it's about holding folks accountable. It's about measuring progress. It's about conferencing with young people and their families. It's about making certain that their families are now engaged in this process and are aware of the process.
Absolutely.
And that will take you throughout the school year. But at the end of the day, students must learn. We want students learning at high levels. And when we see students not learning at high levels, that teachers are taking the time to make the adjustments.
Take the time to make the adjustments. It's a very good quote. Take the time to make the adjustments means that there must be faculty meetings. There has to be professional development. You have to have an academic leader in your building who is committed to your professional development.
Yes.
Teachers have to, each teacher has to be committed to his or her own development, in the sense that they have to be readers to be leaders.
That's right.
And they have to improve upon their practice.
That's right.
Often. When we return, I would like to talk to you about what can a teacher do to engage in professional development. How can each teacher improve his profession? We'll be right back. Welcome back to Red TV, Real Education Television. Today we have Hilderbrand Pelzer III, who is an academic giant and leader. We're very interested in his words. I'm thrilled to be able to talk to an academician who is eager and ready to eat the elephant in the room. Today's topic, we're talking about teachers and professional development. I'm really interested in the idea of teaching as a profession and teaching as an art. Sometimes I'm often dismayed when I meet teachers who do not put their best foot forward in the classroom. In this segment, I want to talk about how teachers can engage in professional development. If you want to be treated as a profession with a vocation, you have to act like a teacher with a profession and a vocation. And one way to do that is through professional development. I think the best way to keep yourself abreast of the latest and greatest information in terms of academia is to stay current in your reading. You need to read as much as possible to be a reading leader in this profession. There are many magazines that your school may provide subscriptions for.
Absolutely.
Not to mention, you can search out and become a part of many different types of professional development, conferences, lectures, organizations that you can get involved in. You need to beef up as much as possible, so to speak, your resume, your credentials. Take a look at your curriculum vitae and see what type of programs you're involved in, so that you can see that your background is getting stronger in your work. Hilderbrand, what are your thoughts on how to have teachers stay current in this profession?
In the era of internet, Twitter, there are so many opportunities to stay engaged with cutting-edge information around education, research, professional learning communities, as you mentioned, conferences, articles, books, just reading. So teachers, principals, school leaders must have an interest in developing themselves beyond just what the school or school district may offer, but developing themselves so that they are stronger and better each and every day. Inside of a school, however, it's very important to have collaborative opportunities, data team meetings, grade group meetings, teacher leaders who help coach teachers, new teachers and younger teachers, principals who observe classrooms and give feedback that will help a teacher grow and get stronger in the areas where they may need improvement. There are a number of opportunities for teachers who want to be the best to get this knowledge.
To have longevity in this profession, you need to stay current in this work. And Mr. Hilderbrand Pelzer III has been very gracious with his time. We're very excited to be able to discuss these ideas. And we'll continue our discussions on Red TV, Real Education Television. We're very committed to helping you strengthen your work as an academic leader. Today, we are talking to Hilderbrand Pelzer III. We really thank you, for your time. I'm thrilled to be able to be in your presence, and we invite Hilderbrand to be our leader, to be our academic giant in the classroom again on our show, so that we can talk about different topics that relate to education. My name is Rachel Slaughter. You're watching Red TV, Real Education Television. Thank you very much. Have a good day.